The cradle was already finished. That is the first thing I remember. Not the loss, not the funeral, not the prayers. The cradle. It sat in the corner of our bedroom beside the window. Handmade, smooth pine wood, carefully carved by my husband Isaac during long winter evenings. Sometimes I would sit beside it and run my fingers along the rail, imagining tiny hands, tiny feet, tiny cries filling our home. I was only 20 years old and expecting my first child. Life felt simple then, hope felt easy. Isaac and I had been married less than 2 years. Our home was small, the roof leaked during heavy storms, the barn needed repairs, and we never seemed to have enough money. But none of that mattered, because we were going to become parents. Every morning felt brighter, every chore felt lighter, every future plan suddenly had meaning. Even the hard days felt beautiful, because somewhere inside me, a new life was growing. I still remember the day I first told Isaac. The snow was melting outside. Water dripped steadily from the roof. He had just returned from feeding the horses. I was standing near the stove, trying not to smile. He noticed immediately. "What are you hiding?" I laughed, then cried, then laughed again. He looked completely confused, until I whispered the news. For a moment he simply stared at me. Then he sat down.
Hard, as if his legs had stopped working.
I had never seen him cry before, not once. That day I did. Happy tears, the kind that make someone look younger. For weeks afterward he carried a smile that refused to leave. Even neighbors noticed, and in an Amish community, people notice everything. The women began offering advice, some helpful, some not. Older mothers shared stories about childbirth. Grandmothers spoke about raising children. Everyone seemed excited, especially me. I started sewing tiny clothes, small bonnets, small blankets, small socks. Every stitch carried a dream. Every finished piece made the baby feel more real, more alive, more present. My mother had passed away years earlier. I missed her constantly during that pregnancy. Sometimes while sewing, I would suddenly wonder what advice she would have given, what stories she would have shared, what she would have said when fear appeared. Because fear always appears eventually, especially with a first child, and especially when you are young. The pregnancy went well at first. No major problems, no serious concerns. At every gathering, people said the same thing. "You look healthy, you are carrying well, you will be a wonderful mother." I believed them. Why wouldn't I? Nothing seemed wrong. Everything seemed exactly as it should be. Then came the rain. Weeks of it. Endless rain. Cold spring rain. The kind that turns roads into mud and fills the air with grayness. One evening, near the end of my pregnancy, I noticed something strange. The baby had not moved much. At first I ignored it. The next morning I noticed it again. Still very little movement. By evening, almost none. Fear entered my heart. Quietly, slowly, like a shadow moving across a room. I placed my hands on my stomach, waiting, listening, praying. Please move. Please, just once. Hours passed, nothing. I told Isaac. His face changed immediately. The smile he had carried for months disappeared. Within a short time, word was sent for the midwife. The waiting felt unbearable. Every minute felt like an hour. Every hour felt like a day. When the midwife finally arrived, she examined me carefully, far more carefully than usual. The room became silent. Isaac stood near the door, watching, hoping, terrified. The midwife's face grew increasingly serious. I noticed. Isaac noticed. Everyone noticed. But nobody spoke. Not yet. Finally she looked at me, then at Isaac, then down at the floor. I knew before she said anything. Mothers often know, sometimes before words arrive, sometimes before truth is spoken. Deep inside, I already knew. The baby is gone. Those 4 words shattered my world. Everything stopped. The room, the air, time itself, everything. I remember staring at her, certain I had misunderstood, certain she meant someone else's baby, someone else's child, someone else's life. Not mine, not ours. Not the child whose clothes were folded neatly inside a wooden chest. Not the child whose cradle waited beside our bed. Not the child Isaac had dreamed about every single day. The baby could not be gone. The baby was supposed to come home. The baby was supposed to sleep in that cradle. The baby was supposed to grow up, learn to walk, learn to talk, ride in a buggy, laugh, live. Instead, silence filled the room. The cruelest silence I had ever known. Isaac slowly sat down. His face looked pale, empty, broken. I had never seen a human heart break before. That evening I saw two, his and mine. The days that followed became a blur. Pain, tears, exhaustion, prayer, then more tears. Women from the community brought food, bread, pies, soups, casseroles, acts of kindness. Yet somehow, I felt completely alone, because nobody seemed willing to talk about what had happened. Not really, not honestly. Everyone said nearly the same thing. God has a reason. Trust the Lord, pray more. You will understand someday. Everything happens according to His plan. I know they meant well, I truly do, but none of those words touched my grief. None of them sat beside me in the darkness. None of them answered the question burning inside me. Why? Why my baby? Why now? Why us? 1 week later, the funeral took place, and what happened afterward would leave a wound that lasted far longer than anyone realized. The funeral took place on a cold gray morning. The sky looked heavy, the kind of sky that makes the entire world feel quieter. I remember standing beside Isaac as neighbors arrived one by one. Black buggies lined the road. Men spoke softly. Women kept their eyes lowered. Nobody laughed. Nobody smiled. Everything felt distant, like I was watching someone else's life instead of my own. Inside our home, people gathered in silence. The air smelled of coffee, wool coats, and damp earth. I sat near the window while visitors offered condolences. Most of them meant well. I know that now. But grief changes how words sound. Even kind words can feel painful, especially when your heart is broken. One woman squeezed my hand. The Lord needed another angel. Another said, "You are young. There will be more children." Another whispered, "Everything happens for a reason." I nodded politely, over and over, like a proper Amish woman should. But inside, every sentence felt wrong. Not cruel, just wrong. Because nobody seemed willing to acknowledge what had actually happened. My baby had died, my child. Not a lesson, not a test, not a future blessing. A child. And I missed that child with every breath. The burial itself was simple. Amish funerals usually are. No elaborate displays, no grand speeches, no dramatic ceremonies. Just family, community, prayer, and sorrow. The cemetery sat beside a quiet field not far from the church district. The ground was still damp from weeks of rain. I remember staring at the small grave. Far too small. No mother should ever think that. No mother should ever know exactly how small a grave can be. Isaac stood beside me, silent, completely silent. His shoulders looked heavier than I had ever seen. The wind moved through the trees. People prayed. The bishop spoke. And all I could think was, my baby should be in my arms. Not here. Not beneath the ground. Not beneath a simple marker surrounded by mud. After the funeral, everyone returned home. Meals were shared. Visitors came and went. Life slowly resumed, at least for everyone else. For me, everything had stopped. Days passed. Then weeks. The cradle remained beside the window, untouched, waiting, empty. Sometimes I found myself staring at it for hours. Other times I covered it with a blanket because looking at it hurt too much. Yet hiding it hurt too. Nothing felt right anymore. One evening I entered the bedroom and found Isaac sitting beside the cradle. The room was dark except for a single oil lamp. He was holding one of the tiny blankets we had prepared. The one with the careful stitching. The one I had finished only weeks before. For several moments he didn't notice me. Then he quickly folded the blanket, as if embarrassed, as if grief itself were something shameful. That was the beginning of a different kind of loneliness. Not loneliness from strangers. Loneliness inside a marriage. Isaac was grieving too. I knew that. But we grieved differently. I cried. He became quieter. I wanted to talk. He wanted silence. I wanted memories. He avoided them. Neither of us understood the other. One night I finally asked him, "Do you ever think about the baby?" The question seemed to surprise. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he answered, "Every day." His voice cracked, only slightly, but enough. That answer broke my heart all over again. because until then I had thought I was grieving alone. I had mistaken silence for indifference. But silence was simply how Isaac carried pain, the same way his father had, and his father's father before him. Still, understanding did not make the loneliness disappear, because the community continued saying the same things. Pray more, trust God, move forward, do not dwell on sadness. Every conversation seemed to end there, as if grief had an expiration date, as if enough prayer should make the pain disappear. One afternoon at a sewing gathering, an older woman sat beside me. She meant well, most people did. That almost made it harder. After a few minutes she leaned closer. You must be careful not to stay sad too long. I stared at the quilt in my lap. She continued. Too much grief can become a lack of faith. The words hit me harder than she realized. A lack of faith. I repeated them all the way home, over and over. A lack of faith. Was that what people thought? That my tears meant I trusted God less? That my heartbreak meant I was spiritually weak? That night I knelt beside my bed. For the first time in my life, I struggled to pray. Not because I stopped believing, because I was exhausted. Exhausted from hurting, exhausted from pretending, exhausted from hearing that more prayer was the answer to every wound. I whispered into the darkness, I am praying. Tears rolled down my face. I have been praying. My voice shook, but I still miss my child. The room remained silent. No miracle came, no voice answered, only the sound of my own crying. And somehow, that honest moment felt more real than anything I had experienced since the funeral. For the first time, I stopped pretending that faith erased pain. Winter arrived early that year. Snow covered the fields, the roads grew quiet, the world seemed smaller, more isolated. And during that long winter, something happened that changed everything. Something hidden, something nobody knew about, something my husband had been carrying completely alone. And when I discovered it, I finally understood a truth that would alter our marriage forever. Winter settled over our community like a heavy blanket. Snow covered the fields. The roads disappeared beneath ice. The trees stood bare against gray skies, and the world grew very quiet. Most people think grief arrives like a storm, violent, loud, impossible to ignore. But the deepest grief often comes later, after the visitors leave, after the casseroles stop arriving, after people stop asking how you are doing, when everyone else returns to life, and you cannot. That winter became the loneliest season of my life. The holidays came and went, church services continued, families gathered, children played in the snow, and everywhere I looked I saw reminders of what should have been. A baby wrapped in blankets, a young mother holding her child, tiny footprints near a doorway. Each sight felt like a fresh wound. The cradle still sat beside our bedroom window, empty, waiting, mocking my hope. Some days I covered it with a quilt, other days I uncovered it. I could never decide which hurt more, seeing it, or pretending it was not there. Isaac remained quiet, too quiet. At first I believed he was healing better than I was, stronger than I was, perhaps even moving on. That belief filled me with resentment. A resentment I hated, because I loved him. Yet part of me kept thinking, why am I the only one still broken? Then one snowy evening everything changed. The wind howled outside. The house creaked softly. I was searching for extra candle wicks in a wooden cabinet near our bedroom, a cabinet Isaac rarely used. While moving a stack of folded papers, something slipped to the floor, a small bundle tied with string. At first I thought it was farm records, receipts perhaps, nothing important. Then I saw my name, written in Isaac's handwriting. My hands froze. I slowly untied the string. Inside were pages, dozens of them, letters he had written, but never given to me. I sat on the edge of the bed. The candlelight flickered. My heart pounded, and I began reading. The first letter had been written 2 days after we lost the baby. The handwriting looked shaky, uneven, unlike Isaac's usual careful writing. The first sentence read, I do not know how to talk about this out loud. I stopped breathing. For months I had believed he felt nothing. For months I had mistaken silence for strength. For months I had wondered whether he mourned at all. Now I realized how wrong I had been. I continued reading. I keep hearing Hannah cry after she thinks I am asleep. I want to help her, but I do not know how. Every time I look at the cradle, I feel like I cannot breathe. Tears filled my eyes. I turned to the next letter, then the next, then another. Each one revealed a grief I had never seen, a grief he had hidden from everyone, including me. One letter described the day of the funeral. I wanted to carry our child home. I knew I could not. But every step away from that grave felt wrong. Another letter described church. People tell me God has a plan. I believe God has a plan, but I still miss my child. I began crying so hard I could barely read, because those were the exact words living inside my own heart. The same questions, the same pain, the same confusion. All this time we had been standing only a few feet apart, and neither of us knew the other was drowning. That night, Isaac came into the bedroom and found me holding the letters. The moment he saw them, his face changed. Fear, embarrassment, vulnerability. I had never seen him look that exposed before. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he quietly said, "I wasn't supposed to leave those out." I looked at him through tears. "Why didn't you tell me?" His eyes lowered. The answer came slowly, because it was honest. I thought I needed to be strong. Strong. That word again. The same word that had hurt both of us. The same word our community praised. The same word that had kept us suffering alone. I reached for his hand. The first time in months either of us had truly reached for the other. And then something happened. Something neither of us expected. Isaac cried. Not a few tears. Not quietly. He broke. Completely. Years later, I would still remember that moment. The sound of a grieving father finally allowing himself to grieve. We sat together for hours, talking, crying, remembering. For the first time since losing our child, we stopped protecting each other from the truth. We said the baby's name. We talked about our dreams. We talked about our fears. We talked about the future. And somehow, the burden became lighter. Not because the pain disappeared, because it was finally shared. The following months changed me. Not instantly. Healing never works that way. But gradually, slowly, like winter giving way to spring, I began understanding something nobody had ever taught me. Faith and grief are not enemies. You can trust God and still cry. You can pray and still hurt. You can believe and still ask difficult questions. The community had not meant to harm me. Most of them truly wanted to help. But many people are uncomfortable around grief, so they rush toward answers, toward advice, toward explanations, because sitting beside someone's pain feels harder. What I needed was not another sermon, not another reminder to pray, not another explanation. I needed someone willing to sit beside me and say, "This hurts." And it did. It hurt terribly. Years passed. God eventually blessed us with children, then grandchildren, then great-grandchildren. Life continued. Joy returned, laughter returned, hope returned, but I never forgot my first child. Not after 1 year, not after 10, not after 50. Even now, when I pass that cemetery, I think about that little life, that brief life, that deeply loved life, and I smile. Not because the loss stopped hurting, because love survived it. The greatest lesson grief ever taught me was this. Missing someone is not a failure of faith. It is evidence that they mattered, that they were loved, that they will always be part of your story. People told me to pray more, and I did pray, many times. But what finally helped me heal was not prayer alone. It was honesty. It was allowing myself to mourn. It was allowing my husband to mourn. And understanding that grief is not something you overcome. It is something you learn to carry with love. The cradle beside our window is gone now. The house is gone too. But the memory remains. And so does the child we never got to raise. The child who taught me that even the shortest lives can leave the deepest footprints. And that is the truth I carried in silence for many years.